and he was an extreme hiker, and he came back from being out there in the desert for quite a few days on an extreme hike on his own, and he came back and told this story about having discovered this. He called it a portal, and he said it was frightening enough that he didn't know what to do and didn't want to do anything with it at that time. He wanted to come back and tell some people about it and get some advice. Well, nobody believed him. And finally he said, well, I'm going to go back there and I'm going to go into it. And people close to him knew the day that he had left, and they knew where he was going to go. And he went out there, and he's...
Welcome to the Consciousness of the Way, and I am your humble servant and seafood, Taoist Master San Qing, and my brother from another mother is back again. I'm so grateful. Welcome back to the podcast, Father Shawn. How are you, brother?
I'm gonna call this part 2, Morning Joe with
Yes.
Master Shawn.
Yes, Morning Joe. I just finished mine, but I'll take a soda right here. There you go.
And I also brought in an extra bottled water too. But
Well,
I want to thank you for two things. One, the first interview was wonderful. I have a confession to make. I haven't listened to it again, and I thought my wife kind of laughed when I said that the other day, because the topic came up because we were having dinner, and I shared. I don't know. I looked you up on Facebook, couldn't find you. I was going to send you a friend request, and I don't know how many places you send your podcast other than your YouTube channel, which is wonderful. So I sent it when you sent me the link to the show. I sent it everywhere. I'm on many different social media networks. So I had, for days, I've been getting all these, and this was like, I think starting last Saturday night when you sent it to me, I've had all these people just loving the interview, loving you way more than loving me, because everybody's tired of hearing me talk. But loving the show. And my wife watched it too. I sent it to her Facebook page. She's in here all the time working. This is her office. She watched it, loved the interview, and then asked me if I'd listened to it. And I said, I plan to. But then she kind of laughed. She goes, well, I was just joking. You were there. Why do you need to listen to it? What's funny is you commented that you had, I guess, in your editing and putting it together and preparing it to put it on your channel, you probably have to watch it, or some of it, or most of it. And you had commented that you had enjoyed the interview. And it's different. It's different when you sit back and you don't even realize you're doing it, but you're watching. I don't really like to watch myself, but you are watching it through a different lens, if you will, and it takes on a different feel than when you're actually there in the moment talking. And I don't remember, you commented on something in the green room just before we went live. I don't know, did you tell me the first time we met that you were from Australia? Or did you just
maybe? I think so. I don't know.
I couldn't remember. And then as soon as you had commented on that, we were talking about all these old shows that you and I both like and grow up on. You had mentioned, it was just so a matter of factly and quickly, you'd mentioned Australia. And I couldn't remember that you had said that before. So the first thing I thought of was, I had this wonderful woman on my show the other day, and she's in Australia, and she's sitting in her office talking to me. And like through the first third of the interview, I'm hearing what sounds like an angry child outside banging on her window to come in the office. And I don't say anything. I wait for her to say something or get up and fix the problem, or I don't even know really what I was expecting, but it didn't stop. Bang, 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 bang. Finally, I had to ask her. And she said, well, hold on a minute. She took her camera and she pointed it towards the window, and through these beautiful double door glass window doors on her back porch is this whole family of kangaroos. And they're banging on the back door for breakfast. She said, my husband and I made the mistake of feeding them one time. and now they're here every morning the same time. And if we don't have food out there for them, they won't leave until we do. So, unfortunately, I'm sitting here having an interview with you, but when I'm done, I'm going to have to go feed them. I thought that was the not only funny, but a most amazing thing I'd ever witnessed. And I thought to myself, what a phenomenal country to live in. And I know so many friends that live over there. I mean, everything there can kill you. And everybody there seems to have such a, like you, this just wonderful spirit um, of everything, of adventure, of life. Uh, just why are you here? Why are you here in
Listen,
Las Vegas, man?
I'll be very honest with you. This is the most magical country, in my opinion, in the world. It outshines Australia without question. But
Wow.
everything has its own value. And Australia has an incredible value, and America also. But you could literally spend your life traveling America and never truly embody every aspect of it because it's so incredible. And I suppose you could do the same thing in Australia. Yet most people get sort of like mesmerized with Australia, and I think it's really powerful. But when you look at the infrastructure of how things are set up in that country, it doesn't lean itself towards people that are real innovators. They say it does. There's a breeding ground for innovation and creativity, and world leaders, thought leaders, and things of this nature. But they always end up in America because this is an environment where people can really value what it is that you're sharing with the world. And I think it's important that there is very much what we call a tall poppy syndrome in Australia, where there's a vast difference between the have and the have-nots. Whereas here in this country, you can have some dream in your mind. You're mopping the floors in McDonald's as a janitor, but you want to own a Porsche, and you're like, "This is my dream. I want a Porsche." I saw a movie. It's inside me. It's seeded into my every fabric. I want to work hard and acquire this Porsche for whatever reason. It's your dream. In one way, shape, or form in this country, you can achieve that. In Australia, there is such a vast gap between the have and have-nots that the idea of you being a janitor at McDonald's and wanting a Porsche is so delusional, because the Porsche in of itself, something that might cost $100,000 here is $350,000 in Australia. So the idea that you could wrap your mind around it it's almost an impossibility, and it's getting bigger by the day due to the infrastructure of the country. And it really varies. Now we're all interweb connected, and have been for since the mid to late 90s. It's definitely more potential for everybody, but in actuality, the construct of the country is problematic, and it doesn't lead itself to truly embracing. If you have a dream, dream it, create it, be it.
If you don't mind me asking,
Mhm.
what did bring you here?
It was my pursuit of many things, but in the first and foremost, it started with a relationship, and I was on my path as a priest, and I sort of came over here and have been for, oh my goodness, 30 years. It's a long, long journey, but it did start with a
All in
relationship.
Vegas or kind of around the
I
country?
was I was around America, but this is the greatest. In my opinion, I love this state. This is my home, and there's a lot of core values that I appreciate. It might be a little twisted with the political landscape that can be altered, depends on the individual. But generally speaking, I just love the state. It's more in line with how I see reality and just living life. And this country is just wild. And now, of course, I mean, there is no other place. You go out in the desert and you want to be at one with all things, that's where you go. And so I bring a lot of people out here whenever they're doing workshops with me or things of that nature, training, because we'll go to the natural formed, pyramids that are the mountains. You get out there and you get into the right alignment. You obviously, through training, I train people how to see and feel vortices and attune yourself to the highest level. We call it body dowsing, and you're able to find ley lines, find power centers, find vortices. And you and I understand this in deep detail, because within religion, back in the day, before everything went to pot over the last X amount of years, in relation to people finding the right highest resonant spot to put their temple, their church. There was a mastery to that. It wasn't just, oh yeah, we'll just drop it right here. No, you find the place that is highly connected with pure source, God, universe, Tao, and you will feel it rippling through the very essence of the ground that you build on. And of course, this doesn't take place anymore. It's like a lost art form, and people don't value what it means. And you'll know when you go into places of worship, there's a charge there. There's an absolute charge that comes with.
True places of worship. Some
Yes, yeah,
places you go into and you can feel that something's just not right.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so, you know, this is the place where you want really magical things to take place. You come here. And it's so funny because you don't realize how deep you can go when it comes to healing. I just had a guy on the podcast, and he's sort of using what he calls technology. I call it, direct source. And you imprint that, and you create that, you form that, and you can put it into a space, and it will change the very infrastructure right down to a subatomic level, even a can. It doesn't matter, whatever is, it's all energy. So it depends on the density, the frequency of it, but it will be a space of healing. So for me, I have these certain, what we call, devices in relation to an infused formation of stones that are hand picked from the desert. They're infused with the frequency of the Tao, and you receive them in this bag with, it's like 18 pieces, and you can create geometry and create a vortices in your space, and it'll instantly charge anything. You can put water in it and it'll change the molecular structure. Go and get it measured. And people get freaked out. It's like, hang on a second, I didn't have to have a belief system. I didn't have to have, no, this is a direct source access to this very resonance. And so all this stuff is going on. I mean, for the audience, that's what Father Shawn does when he walks into a space. He's bringing that connection that he has with God, and it's present. He's a catalyst and an amplifier of that, and that alters the very space that he's in, and what he does with whoever it is that needs his assistance or guidance or realignment. I mean, it comes in so many different forms, but I mean, this is what we're speaking of. Does that make sense?
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. And it's you know, when you were telling that uh, about the desert, talking about the desert, you think of how uh, in tune the indigenous people were with that very theory. And I know people that look for places to go and live where they call them the power spots, or
Hmm.
out there. And we also talk about how all of this stuff is under attack on so many different levels. And I don't know if you saw the news the other day, but it was like they had those vandals caught on film out there at Red Rock. Uh,
No, I didn't see it.
they actually climbed up,
Hmm.
and I don't know if you've ever been out to Red Rock, but you can go out there and hike around, and it's just beautiful. But there's a lot of areas where there's hieroglyphics painted or carved into the rocks and stuff, and there's uh, the indigenous have made rock sculptures and stuff, and these guys had climbed up on top of some of these beautiful ancient rock sculptures, and they were destroying them. They were pushing, you know, whatever rocks they could get loose from the structures and topple them down this mountainside. They were doing, and somebody had filmed it and turned it into law enforcement. I don't know if they caught them, but that's just such a shame that
Well, they're going to have their own bad day. That's a sacred space,
yeah,
and you start altering those type of like
yeah,
frequencies, and people need to understand this is like very real. So you want to disfigure or deform something that's sacred in its nature, and it has its own resonance. You're going to have a rippling effect within your own reality, especially if you're subject to a duality, which 99% of people are. It's going to get real for you. And so all of a sudden, they went and then they made the mistake of defacing something that was so beautiful and sacred, which is all things. But like the intention of doing that will have a rippling effect in their own reality. And, it's like, oh, I got some real bad luck. I can't seem to shake. Well, maybe you should have thought about not attempting to play with something that you don't really understand. I mean, my goodness, there's a lot of juice there, Father Shawn.
yeah.
And that is a very, very sacred space. And it's, from what I can see, there's quite a few incredible what we would call ambassadors. There seems to be somewhat 12 or 18 of these ambassadors that are present in that space alone, and they're very high light looking beings, more like angels, but they have like robes that look like, how would I put it? It's kind of like a friar tuck robe, but it's in white, and these beings are a white, very high frequency. And so, hey, look, you do you. If you want to go there, that's for you to decide what happens after that. But it's not necessarily going to end well, from what I can see.
Do you recall hearing a story about a extreme hiker that went missing out in the desert here? Um,
No,
I
no.
worked this missing persons case many
Oh,
years ago, and he was an extreme hiker, and he came back from being out there in the desert for quite a few days on an extreme hike on his own, and he came back and told this story about having discovered this. He called it a portal, and he said it was frightening enough that he didn't know what to do and didn't want to do anything with it at that time. He wanted to come back and tell some people about it and get some advice. Well, nobody believed him. And finally he said, "Well, I'm going to go back there and I'm going to go into it." And people close to him knew the day that he had left, and they knew where he was going to go. And he went out there and he's never been seen again. And some of the uh, largest, most extensive missing person searches went on for him for quite some time, and he just vanished without a trace. And so, of course, everybody thinks he probably fell down a mine. Well, he described, you could find. I mean, they found every known mine that they could find in these areas, and sent down, probes and cameras and drones and what have you. No trace of the guy. But this thing that he described having seen, it wasn't a mine, whether you believe that he did actually find it or not. So, and this was out near Area 51. And so I'm thinking to myself, I wonder what he found. If he found something that the government abducted him, or was it extraterrestrials, not of this world, or was it a true vortex or portal like you and I would believe exist and had gone into another dimension and just vanished, and wasn't able to get back? Uh, when I tell you a story like that, what do you think?
well, it's being very clear. There's a lot of information coming in about some type of like alien interference, which is really evident. And then, but then you drew on another sort of situation where three-letter organizations are very much interested in people that explore these types of things on a deeper level. So, um, first and foremost, the alien interference, and perhaps, but not really. I'm not really given any sort of insight into a free three-letter organization per se. So, the question is he physically with us? Is the question.
If you thought something like that, let's say he found a portal or
Mhm.
a vortex that went to another dimension, do you think that would be it would be such of the nature that you couldn't get back through?
I think that anything is possible. Now, physically, is he not with us? And, the answer is yes. The question is where is there's no leading evidence. I mean, how far can you scope through this landscape and not find at least the remains?
Nothing. That was the pretty miraculous thing about it. Nothing. I mean, they had planes look for the guy. They had, you know, drones everywhere flying around. Extensive groups of people going out. There were also extreme hikers and new areas that the guy frequented when he went out on these hikes out by Area 51. And um, yeah, not a trace. And it's been years and never popped up anywhere, even if he faked his own death. And he owed, you know, also so the story, all the, bad stories start to come up, and him being, a bad gambler and having some gambling debts and having upset one or two people who were, you know, uh, said to have had connections with organized crime, that he faked his own death to get out of paying these debts off, or they got a hold of him and killed him. And the organized crime people have always been known to be really good at disappearing people, but still, usually, there's always a whistleblower somewhere that comes out and tells the truth. But it's just the story is just, and how he described this portal and the vibrations that came out of it, and the things he saw. It's just pretty amazing. And I talked to a lot of I could never um, what do they call the guys that go into the caves? Splunkers. I could never do that because one, I hate bugs, and I don't really like the dark, and I think I'm a little bit of claustrophobic, so I couldn't really go into these caves. But I've talked to a lot of these professional, lifelong splunkers that go into areas where they say they've seen other worlds, and they've gone places where no one's gone, and described like other worlds and other dimensions, and seen creatures that that we don't know exist, and things of that nature. Um,
I mean, you start to eliminate certain things. First, three-letter organization, no. Second, is he physically alive? No. Third, was it part of a sort of a organized abduction? No. But is it something of an extraterrestrial nature? Yes. But I can also very clearly see in full form his physical body at the base of a sort of a cliff formation, and it's not deteriorated at all, which is really strange. So, but it's not moving either. So then now we start looking at, okay, well, this information is great. Now, what does that really mean? There's a level of understanding that he has had a direct encounter with a being not from this realm, and the physical. I'm not very clear as to why there's still a physical body that's laying there, and now it's sort of now like alive and active, which doesn't make any sense to me. So I'm going to ask for a little bit more insight on that. And so No, very clear, a runner, shorts, sweat, flesh, very vital. And now it's sort of like extremely active, yet it's quite clear they're telling me that he is not physically with us. So the reason for this sort of like animated sort of movie that they're sharing with me is more a rewind back to the last moments that he was here in this realm. And so, you know, I don't dismiss anything, and I really stay the observer, so the information is as clear as possible. And so, you know, we're looking at some type of like literal interaction with direct action with something not of this planet that is like beaming him up into a spaceship, which is absolutely, I've never seen anything like this before, which I think is kind of cool. And I don't dismiss anything. So, put it this way: he's not here. He's not physically here, and there's something that has abducted him, and clearly permanently. I mean, how many years has it been now?
A few, definitely a few. I can't give you an exact number. I'll just throw out 5. I'm thinking probably at least 5 years.
Yeah. Well, I
And,
mean,
and the first couple of years, easily extensive searches for him.
and I mean the relationship with the gambling and whatnot, that wasn't enough for anyone's interest. So I
Yeah,
don't.
not yeah, yeah. I agree 100%. Although I will say some of these groups that searched for him, and this is nothing new either, when they would get a little bit too close to Area 51 searching for him, of course, it wouldn't be very long before authorities would approach them and stop them from, going any further. So, of course, everybody said, well, that's proof that he himself too went too far into an area where the government took him.
No, no,
I don't.
no. I mean, it's very clear that from my perspective, the direct information I'm getting, he was abducted. So the question is I've never seen that before. I think it's
Something was amazing enough, even though he was so frightened that he didn't go in the first time, that he needed to come back and tell some people about this wonderful, amazing, scary, but just amazing thing he had witnessed. And he's going to, and then he decided to go back. I'm going to go back and go in it. Something was amazing enough about it for him to want to go back and go in it. So there you go.
Well, the vortices is pretty palpable, but that wasn't where he went in. He was like abstracted from the earth through this vortex that drew him into an actual, some type of like spaceship vehicle that was really kind of atypical. It was like very typical of sort of like the classic viewpoint of an alien sort of saucer like ship, nothing too detailed or descriptive, but it looked like sort of a very thick looking like disc, and it was enough for the presence of quite a few of these beings, and they're very large head, big buggy eyes, small body, very phosphorus in white light with a sort of a tint of potentially sort of a metallic blue color. And yeah, that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, to say the least. I also, we were talking about before we went live. We were talking about a little bit of Hollywood and old movies and stuff, and I have in the movies that I grew up on, and it's just pretty amazing. I'm thinking of an old scene from Godfather 3 where Al Pacino's in the kitchen and he's about to have his stroke, and he delivers the famous line, "Just when I think I'm out, they pull me back in." You and I, another thing we have in common is like, and maybe, and I don't want to put words in your mouth or speak for you, but as many times have I tried to turn the page and move on from the paranormal thing, it won't let you. It won't let me, at least. And
Oh, no, I love it. I love
yeah,
it. That's why you and I have to have our adventures, and I wanna get a series going. I wanna get a series going because there's so much awesome stuff in Vegas for us to explore, and why not? I mean, people love this stuff. Just a suggestion. I'm not just instantly accepting that you're going to just jump in with me, but I would invite you to. I would love you to.
oh, that would be awesome, man. I
Yeah,
never get out. That would be awesome. That would be so.
yeah,
That'd be a reason to want to get out. I never
yeah,
get out, you know.
yeah.
So that would be awesome. And uh, what do you? How do you handle all of that? I mean, it's uh, to me. I think I'm still so fascinated and passionate about it because really, we, as much as we think we know, there's also so much we still don't know. And finally, I s- I simplified it, for me at least, and it works for me to simplify it and keep it just, I want to help people. So when people call me, it doesn't really matter what they're dealing with. They're frightened to death. Their family's frightened to death. Their life's been turned upside down. They've got something in their home that's, and it might be anything from what you might call a disembodied human spirit to something that never inhabited a human body to something a lot darker and a lot meaner and a lot more menacing. But there's nothing like, and just the simple fact of taking somebody's call and talking them through that first initial interview empowers them in so many ways. Just the fact that somebody listened to them and somebody believes them and somebody is calm about it and not freaking out like, get out of the house now, run, move out of state, and um, you're not behaving like that, uh, is a lot of help to them right off the bat. And then if you're able to bring these, whatever you're up against, if you're able to bring these cases to closure, the reward, it's I can't even adequately describe the feeling, the reward uh, when you help these people. So that's probably why I still find it so. Two reasons: one, there's so much I know that just when I think I know a lot, I realize how much I don't know. But the reward of helping people who just are truly, I mean, uh, they're about to, throw in the towel and give up on life because they would rather do that than to continue to go on the way they are because they're just frightened out of their wits. Helping these people, the reward is just so great, and that's why I talk to paranormal teams all the time who don't want to go into somebody's home, don't really want to help people. They want to prove that ghosts exist, and they want to go to all these locations and investigate. But I tell them you're missing the boat. The reason why you should have got into this, you're never going to be able to prove ghosts exist. Guys like you and I know they do, but you're never going to be able to prove to diehard skeptics that don't believe that it's real. But the real reward here is getting into the paranormal investigative field to find out enough that you can pass the knowledge on to people that don't know anything and that are freaked out and help them through these, because there's nothing like, and unless you've gone, and unless you've gone through it and dealt with living through a haunting or a demonic infestation or God forbid worse, you don't know really what it's like. So these, to see how you are able to give these people back their lives is just the feeling is just phenomenal. It's just such a good feeling. So how um, do you have different ways you approach that? Like if it's just a ghost or the demonic or things
Yeah.
of that nature, or
Yeah, I mean, there's many different playbooks or ways that you approach things, and it sort of becomes very organic once you have the fundamentals of what it is that's going on at that particular moment. Like when we go on our adventures, we're going to like come across, power centers, water seers, spirit entities, and everything in between. And this is all part of the infrastructure of the buildings that we're going to go to. It's like sitting there. It's everywhere. It's this very moment. And when you start to become more in tune with these subtleties, and you can tap into them, it's a profound moment. So, it brings me to I remember this one, as you would put it, case that I had, and this woman and her husband had this basically a haunting, what they considered a haunting. And it would start with like the husband would wake up, and they just adopted this, they couldn't have children, so they adopted this child. And she was, I think, like 18 months, 2 years old. Beautiful girl, beautiful girl. And the husband would wake up in the middle of the night. They would sleep in separate rooms due to their inability. They're not comfortable sleeping in the same bed. There's variable reasons why, partners have their own separate spaces due to their own patterns, whatever. So they slept in separate rooms. And every night the husband would hear the daughter going, "Daddy, Daddy." And he'd get up and he'd walk in, and the daughter would be sound asleep in her bed. And he'd go to walk back to his room and be like, "Daddy." And like he could go, that whoa. And so he'd walk back, see the daughter asleep, and still hear this voice, which was summoning him to what was their kitchen area. And so he'd walk in there and get the chills. And I mean, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You can feel it right now. It's like, holy moly. And as he got closer to the kitchen, it was just this huge freezer box. And the chills went through him, just like you're experiencing right now. It's like, now. And the voice would dissipate and be like, what the f? And then you go back to bed. And then this has been going on for a while, right? Then the wife was experiencing the same things because they were sleeping separately. She would hear it. She'd go and check the daughter, and then the voice would summons her into the kitchen. And so they had this separate thing, and they were so afraid they didn't share it with each other. So they were like, "Oh, I'm just like delusional. I'm having these stories." And then finally they were like, "Did you hear?" And they're like, "Did you? Yeah, did you?" And they came together with this sort of like epiphany that there's something going on here that is not of this world, and this is happening. And they freaked out. And of course, next minute, you and I are experiencing that charge. It's like, we need someone. It's called Ghostbusters. And then, of course, I turn up. And let me tell you, it was an interesting one because I took the wife, and, always remember, for anyone listening, that once you enter the light to dark, things present themselves at a far higher rate when you enter the darkness. So if you want to, there's not really a definitive like structure, but put it this way, you're going to find evidence of whatever it is that you're speaking of at a much faster rate when you enter the night as opposed to the day. So, and that's not to say that you don't experience it during the day, but it seems to be a very easy way to access these type of energies. They seem to be very much thriving in an environment that feeds the very structure of who they are. So, if you really want to go deep on it, you start there. And of course, I had her laying on a massage table in the middle of their lounge room, which was sort of, you could enter the kitchen, which is where a lot of the activity, and the activity is like a meat locker. It's like, turn the heat on, it's stagnant, it's dense, it's crazy. And so she's laying on this massage table, and I'm just like, I'll just run some energy through you. And we've got all the lights out. I want the lights out. And so I'm sitting there, and all the lights are out. It's pitch black. And, I'm running energy through her. It's pitch black. That means you can barely see your hand in front of your face. But all of a sudden, this massive crack of light opened up, as a doorway, and this little girl walked out from this crack of light and came towards me. And she the client's just getting high on the energy I'm running. But this young girl walks up to me and I'm like, hello. And she's like, hi. And I'm like, what are you doing here? I'm looking for my parents. I'm like, oh, okay. And like, so the client is like, who are you talking to? Oh, it's okay. You just stay there and relax. I'm working with this so-called energy. And then they freaked out. They jumped up from the table. They sat up in the darkness, and I'm having this conversation, but they're like, I can feel that chill again. It's crazy. It's okay. Take a deep breath. Go and sit down, and I will and turn the lights on. At this point, it had revealed itself. So the magnitude of that, though, for someone who's not familiar with this type of stuff, is going to freak out. It's like, am I delusional? What's going on? No, this is very tangible. This is an entity that's been occupying this space for a long time. Now, we get down to the get down. I can see that this is not the true nature and evidence of what that girl was being run by another entity. And so she had been there since the 60s waiting for her parents. But long story short, and I'll probably, due to YouTube, edit some of these words out, but like, she was raped and killed by her uncle. And the parents knew about it, and they sort of were accomplices in helping him, take care of the business. And so this entity that was sort of running her, which revealed itself soon after, was attached to the uncle. So he was living in purgatory. I mean, there was no bright side for his realization due to how he perceived reality. The construct of everything, he was done. He'll never know what it's like not to live the way he's living, in the in-between and the misery that comes with all the things that he conducted within this plane. And so the daughter, basically, through her own confession, then this entity presented itself. It's like it went from hi to hi, and this Hollywood stuff, but no, it's not Hollywood. It's like very tangible, and like, my clients are freaking out. You're experiencing the amplitude. Sean and I are having a fun time with the charge right now, and it's real as the day is long. And it took me probably 3 hours to convince this entity that it's time to leave. And if you don't leave with the very understanding and framework of the love that I'm offering you, I will do what I need to do to make sure that you no longer inhabit this space. And so it's like, do you want option A or option B? Which one would you like? Which one are you going with? And of course, through the negotiation, because I never like to force my hand, he took option A, which this energy was pretty dark. There was no question about it. And it fed through the uncle, and that's why the uncle did the types of things that he did. And the daughter was still just lost in this loop, sort of bound to the earth, very lost, very sad. I mean, when you start tapping into that stuff, you don't ever want to witness that. You don't ever want to experience that and have it floating in your mind as any type of reminder. And this is what human beings are capable of when they're commandeered by other energies. They have no empathy, no connection with humanity, and they do things that they can't understand why they do them. And they're heinous in their nature. It's soulless. And so this entity, after clearing the whole house, was like, warm and fuzzy, like sitting in sunlight outside on a beautiful sunny day, and the clarity, and you can feel that engulfing through your physical body right now as we speak on it. It's a beautiful, expansive energy that comes when that was removed. But this is very common, and people start with this stuff, and it turns into, and this was sort of like a play against the two of them, when the entity was very clear they were separated and they weren't having this sort of like, you know, daily update and talking to each other about it. It literally took me on their front doorstep to have a complete confession of how deep and how long this has been going on. And they just purchased the house. So as second they entered into the house and then they got their new daughter, it had been going on for 12 months, 18 months. And they're like, this game, this weird game. Now, you know, there's many different things we can do to mitigate this and dissolve it. But very rarely, if at all, have I ever got a situation where it's inhabitable and, you know, set for, you know, demolition. But I do not dismiss something like that being possible because there are no limitations. You have to create, when someone asks me to create a boundary for entities like that, it will banish them and they will not be able to enter anymore within that space, but doesn't mean they're not operating on the periphery. So there must be a much deeper construct of the infrastructure that you put in place so that it's not sort of like waiting for you to, it's like, well, when you walk down the street, I'll catch you. Because these are the types of things. So if you just banish an energy or a spirit, an entity like that, it will be problematic. It's better, in my opinion, my professional opinion, to resolve whatever the catalyst is that makes it present so that it doesn't continue to repeat whatever it is its directive is, and it won't stop until it's. So imagine, for the audience, imagine the Terminator. That's what these entities are like. And if you don't find a resolve and you just banish an entity from a space, it's still going to occupy the periphery. So it can be problematic. It's not a complete open and closed situation where if you resolve it and you give it what it is looking for, which 99% of the time it's always love, and then that is applicable because they had a very broken relationship and it was feeding on anyone that came into that space with that deficiency. And it's just like, you know, feeding at the trough. It was so easy because when you're emotional, you're suggestible. But yeah, that was an example. I don't know. I don't know where we got off on that, but
Oh no, that was yeah. You answered my question.
yeah.
Um,
How is that compared to the types of things you do?
I you know, um, I do things that are probably a little different. I know that sometimes I do things and my own colleagues will get upset with me, and sometimes I'll do things and the clients, you know, that ask me to help them expect something different.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and I'm thinking of a guy that called me the other day, and he said that he's got the attachment of the ghost of a previous wife from a previous life,
Mm-hmm.
and she's been with him since he was aware that she's been with him since he was very very young. She's been with him his whole life. He loves the fact that she's still with him, and he got into ghost busting, ghost hunting, I should say. And he went someplace where he claimed, well, she's a bit of a flirt, and we went to a place where she was flirting with some of the other men ghosts that were at this location, and invited one of them to come back to our house with us when I was done ghost hunting. Now this male spirit is in love with her, wants me out of the picture, and he's attacking me. So he wanted me to come to the house and get rid of the attacking male spirit,
Mm-hmm.
but he didn't want me to get rid of the spirit of his alleged previous wife from a previous life. And I told him it doesn't work that way. He got very upset. I said, they all have to go. Um, I ended up not going to his home to do this because I told him if I come, everybody's got to go because it's just a problem. They're not of this world. They're not of this dimension. They don't
Yeah.
have, they're not supposed to be here. And I think of a lot of these people that reach out to me. I think my Aunt Betty's here. I don't care, but my children care, and they're a little freaked out. My husband cares. He's a little freaked out. Can you come over and talk to Aunt Betty? One, I want to verify it is Aunt Betty, because if it's not Aunt Betty, then you can get rid of it. But if it is Aunt Betty, will you tell Aunt Betty to just appear to me and not to any of the other family members because she's freaking them out? But she can stay. If it is her, she can stay. Um, and there's a lot of theories to that these disembodied human spirits. There's millions and millions of reasons why some of them stay behind. And you hear of these hauntings. I have friends in the UK that have inherited these old structures that are still they can still live in, and there's hauntings there. But it's the hauntings are all over the place, from what they may call residual to intelligent haunts. And some of these intelligent haunts, they love it. Like one guy says, the ghost that's here in my home saved my house from being burnt down. I wasn't home, the house caught on fire, and the fire department, and he's out in the country, there's no neighbors. The fire department was called by somebody here in the home to come and put the fire out. And if this person hadn't have called them, my home for sure would have burnt down, because it's out in the country and I have no neighbors. The nearest neighbor is 5 miles away. So who called? He lives by himself. Who called this person? Who called the fire department? Well, he says, well, it's the ghost that lives here. So I don't mind that the ghost stays here, because obviously it's protective. It's attached to the land and the home, and it's protective over the land and the home and me. So that's cool. But then you have some of these disembodied human spirits that hang around these locations, and there's a theory that they may mean well in the very beginning, and sometimes at first not even know they're dead, then realize they're dead, but still want to hang around for whatever reason. And some theory is that the longer these disembodied human spirits hang around, they don't mean to become this way, but they become malevolent over time because of the loneliness. They're not of this dimension. They're not of this world. They're now of the ages. They need to move on to where they're supposed to be in the spirit realm. And it's just terribly lonely. And this loneliness over time develops this a malevolent nature. So I'm on the fence with it all, but it just, like I said, it works for me to keep it easy, that I believe all the spirits have a place they need to go. And it just doesn't work out them trying to coexist with the living. It just doesn't. Of course, right away when I get there, if it's something really low vibrational and of a true malevolent nature, and it's out for no good and out to harm or kill somebody, uh, that's a completely different story, and that's a battle, and that has to take place, and that thing has to go. So after laying all of that on you, um, do you believe some spirits can, in a healthy manner, if you can call it that, coexist with the living?
Well, yeah, I mean, I've observed it many times over. It's not something that has to be problematic, because there are good there are, in my opinion, good reasons for some of these entities to be present for the nature of whatever it is they're doing. But I mean, they're trapped unless it's from a psych. Have you heard of psychometry before?
I've heard the term, but I'm not
So,
100%
so,
sure
so
what
like for
terminology.
example, Luxor has evidence of the psychometry that is everything has an energy, frequency, vibration, and it's imprinted with these spirit entities that have been drawn in from the geometry of that particular property. And so there, it's like a calling. It's like a a duck call. You're using the duck whistle. You're blowing the whistle, and these entities are forming due to the construct of how you generated this power center with the geometry of the pyramid, and it's forming itself, and you're calling it in. And so there's the spirit entities that are basically part of the tribal land that was there before Luxor. And so then you have these other lost ones where people have taken their own life due to bad circumstances within the hotel, and there's quite a few of those.
Oh yeah.
And so you have this sort of like, um, well, does it have to be? Can we all get along? And so Sean's kind of like, no, I'm not. I'm just going to just wipe the slate clean. I'm a little bit more merciful than you, my friend. I don't get so as long as it doesn't interfere with the operation of whatever it is that I'm doing. I have no problems letting it occupy the space, because in most cases there's a value that they're adding, even though it may only be measured by their life experience. There may be a value there, and they're there for that that next turning point, that epiphany that gives them the opportunity to cross over. But I don't think it has to be problematic. And I mean, I think it's the
I don't think so either. I know any of my colleagues that are going to watch this interview are probably going to have a word with me afterwards, but I have been guilty on a time or two of making a deal, if you will,
Mhm,
realizing I'm just dealing with a disembodied human spirit and they're there to watch over the family, or they
mhm,
were born, raised, and lived their whole life in this home and they're really attached to it and they mean no harm. I've been on more than one occasion, made a deal and say, listen, you know, just don't show yourself to the family anymore. Do whatever, do whatever it is you got to do and to hang out here. You're fine to hang out here. But if you continue to scare them, they're going to ask me back and then I'll probably come back, I'm going to feel guilty doing it. So I'll probably come back with people that are going to send you somewhere you probably don't want to go. So I've been guilty of doing that before. And, it's like when my wife and I first moved in here, this house was built in the early 70s. And the lady that sold the home to my wife was a friend of hers, but she was honest with her and said, listen, for whatever reason, I've never been able to get anybody to want to stay in the home. I rent the home out for a little while. They leave. They never tell me why. They just up and leave. And I haven't been able to sell it. I bring people in here to look around. For some reason, it just doesn't happen. So my wife and I were really needed the price. The price was dirt cheap. We needed a place. We jumped on it, but we noticed that the place was very unkept. It was a fix 'em upper when we moved in, and we moved in with three mastiffs, which destroyed the place even more. Then we went right out and got two more mastiffs after those three went to heaven. They continued the destruction pattern. Um, so we've tried here and there to fix up things here and there. Um, Not very successful at doing it, but it's okay. We don't really entertain here. But we've always felt, even moving in, that there was something attached to either the land or the home here. And then we go and we do what we do. And we figured, well, a lot of these things have followed us here. And I'm thinking of the time that my wife and I woke up and saw this Indian woman standing in our hallway. And when we communicated with her, she told us that, well, I followed you here from the Pioneer Saloon out at Good Springs. I used to live there back in the day, and I thought which I was there doing some blessings on the saloon and some other places there. She said, I loved what you had done there, and I need you to come back and do the same thing at some other locations in Good Springs. And then she was done, but we kept seeing her around the house. So I told my wife, we're just gonna have to make the drive out there, or she's not gonna leave here. She's not up to no good, but she needs help. And until we go back there and do this. So we went out there and it was probably 115 degrees in the shade, middle of summer, but we had to go. So she goes, well, do you even know, honey, where you're going to bless? I said, no, I don't. I'm just hoping she'll show up and tell me. So we started at the cemetery, which is right in the front of the town when you go in there. And then we started just slowly driving through. And when I got the stop the car, when I got the urge that I needed to get out and do some blessings, I did. My wife caught many photos of me doing a blessing, maybe even in a dirt lot, but you could see some type of glowing angelic thing above me. We assumed later that was probably her. And so I did all of the, and then I felt that I had done my job, came home. She appeared again, thanked us for doing that, and then we never saw her again. But then we started seeing this young boy. And so this young boy, we didn't want harmless. Didn't my dogs could see him. Didn't scare my dogs. They would wag, play with him, follow him out the doggy door, and go out in the yard with him. So I'm like, well, he's here for a reason. I'll wait until he tells me what he wants to do. Well, eventually he told us that he was hanging out because he saw us at Good Springs again, and he used to live there, and he just thought we were really cool, and knew that we had dogs and wanted to come and play with the dogs. So I said, well, honey, unless he gets, I don't think I'm being tricked here. I'm capable of being tricked, but I don't think I'm being tricked. Let's just let him do his thing. And I told the kid, there's eventually a time where you need to go home. You're welcome to stay as long as you want to stay, but there's going to be a time where you need to go home. Well, he finally, I guess, he did what he came to do, and then the time came where we didn't see him any longer. Then I was invited out to come and take part in. It wasn't so much a séance as it was just a not even really a conjuring, but kind of a blessing again of the saloon. And when I went there, I'm walking around and sure enough, feel a little hand grab my hand. You know how kids run up behind you and they grab your hand and they walk with you? Clear as day, something grabbed my hand, was walking with me. I knew it was a little boy. And then the little boy jumps on your back, and I knew for sure it was the little boy because that's what kids do. They want to piggyback. So the people that I was there helping with some things that were going on in the saloon thought it was the craziest thing that I'm walking around with this child on my back like I'm giving it a piggyback ride, and they can't see it. But I just thought it was the greatest thing. And then finally, when it was time to go, um, he jumped off my back, and I said goodbye to him, and I made the announcement to all the spirits that you're not welcome to follow me home because it does freak my wife out a little bit. I was honest with her, and she's there shaking her head. She goes, it does freak her out a little bit. It is what it is, but you guys have to stay here. So, I've been guilty a time or two. And on the thing about you're probably have a gift that I don't have in terms of probably, unless it's really something that is really, really, I just have this discernment that lets me know when something's really, really, you're in for a fight. Um, but I do think that there have been times in my life where I've been tricked, where I've thought it was a disembodied human spirit, when in fact it was probably something perhaps demonic. Um, and I do believe that there's times where I've gone in, a holy water bottle's ablazing, thinking it was a demon, and it was ended up just being a spirit who had been around so long and it had developed uh, um, the knowledge to know how to act very poltergeist like, and could make noises and move things and throw things. Um, have you ever encountered that? Do you feel you are capable of being tricked, or is that just something that just happens to be uh, my level of discernment? I know when I'm up against the things I need to battle.
Yeah.
Other than that, I just pretty much write it off as being a disembodied human spirit. Even elementals, I know when I'm dealing with an elemental, which I believe I have those on the property here too. But when it comes to the disembodied human spirits, I put them all in a bushel, all in in a bunch, and I deal with them separately. But I do think that there's been times where um, I've been tricked.
Yeah, no, no. I mean, I just sit back and observe, and as as I turn the frequency up and the resonance, it will reveal itself. So I always start at face value, but it doesn't hang out for that long at a certain state before it will reveal its true nature and you know what it's really here for. And so it has gone from you know from zero to 1,000 in seconds when you sort of up the resonance of what you're transmitting, which is of course pure source. And so it will all of a sudden be, and that's what happened with that particular girl, was she was all nice, and then it was like she instantly was shape shifted into a very very dark low frequency energy, which you could define as demonic. And it was feeding off the whole scenario where the fear was its you know basic food, and the more and more it played on each one of the people that lived in the house, and it was even feeding off the young girl. She would always wake up tired, always drained, always, and it's having a good old time. And I'm talking about the physical daughter, not the other daughter that was waiting for their parents. So you have this sort of scenario where there are variables, but I tend to bring in my team, and they're immortals that will clean things up. I don't even have to be even that active. It's kind of like having security guards around you at all times.
That's
And
another thing you and I have in common. I tell people right off the bat, I have no magic powers. I'm not going to show up and wave a magic wand and make it all better. But what I will do is I will get on my hands and knees and pray that any guardian angels, protective warrior angels, or, you know, to Jesus and God Himself, if anybody, listening is free and can come down here and help me, please do. And I let that, I do my very best to open myself up and allow myself to be a vessel for all of this to come through and take care of that. And I'm basically there just to put my arms around my clients and make them feel that they have somebody that's got their back and that's going to help them stand up against the bully and help them fight. But it's really not me doing much of anything.
well, I
Um,
mean, it just so happens every time you call, someone turns up. I mean,
yeah,
as much as Sean's being humble about this, it's like there is a resonance that we speak of, that you know that the cavalry does come. There's no question about it. It's but there's a relationship that you have with this. These in your situation would probably be archangels, other versions of God and Jesus, variables. And that's what I have. I have variables of the Tao, that these are all my teachers. They're immortals that are focused on specific things, whether it's thunder magic or wind or elements, or, just straight up, most of the time I'll call on a teacher by the name of Li Gong, and he's the god of thunder, and he generally punishes people that are playing with dark or black magic. It's one of his favorite things. So whenever I come across a situation, as you said, a case of people being stalked by someone who's casting black magic upon themselves, oh, he loves that.
what do you do when people like? I don't know if you and I have had this conversation before or
Hmm.
not.
Hmm.
Um, I try to lay the ground rules ahead of time before I go in, and if the people, if I can tell that they're not going to be totally on board with what I'm going to be doing, I usually try to find someone else that can help them because I know that it's just going to make things worse. I hate having to do that, but sometimes it's necessary.
Mm.
And I think something that's pretty baffling to me right now are the amount of people calling me up having issues in their dreams. They're
Hmm.
being visited in their dreams by a whole array of different types of entities. Some of them are in these encounters. Some of them can be very violent encounters where they'll actually wake up and they've got physical signs of these getting beat up. Some of them have these really intense sexual encounters, men and women. Some have these encounters with these angelic beings that some of the descriptions are like what you described earlier, these extraterrestrial type beings that take them on these journeys, like they're astral projecting, and they go on these journeys and are showed other worlds and stuff. Um, are you of the opinion that as many different descriptions that I'm given, it's that many different types of entities, or do you believe that ultimately, when you pull all the layers away, there's going to be one type of entity with one type of agenda? And like I said, again, for me, what works is keeping it simple. I've got disembodied human spirits, occasionally what I think might be elementals attached to the land, and I've got the demonic. And I call them fallen angels. I have disembodied human spirits that I will talk to and say, listen, this isn't where you need to be. You'll be so much happier if you get to where you need to be. And I sometimes call in help this spirit get to where it needs to be. The elementals, I just kind of try to appease them, which I get a lot of colleagues of mine get on me a lot for that. But that's a little bit of the Native American in me wanting to appease them with the candy and the tobacco and the alcohol and the prayers that have been given to me by holy people from indigenous tribes, along with praying to the Holy Family too when I'm out there. I don't ever forget them. They're first and foremost. Then I kind of filter down into some of the indigenous stuff when I'm dealing with elementals. But um, what do you think when all these people are all these different descriptions of all these different types of beings they're encountering in these dream states? And
Oh,
some of it's that old hag, the theory where they wake up and there's an old woman or some type of troll looking being that's sitting on them and they can't move. It's all over the board.
yeah, no, it's absolutely variables of one frequency. It just depends on where that person is in their own cycle of their reality that they bring in and transmute it. It's like they've got the perfect seamless cloth and they take themselves as a pair of scissors and cut out whatever shape they want, and it will transmute and align with what they're experiencing at this present moment. And so, it's all synchronized right down to I'm in the right place at the right time with the right person. And it will be realized depending upon what and how they're calibrating their reality. So, as much as people like to say there's coincidence, I believe there is not. So, right down to you purchasing the house you're in and being surrounded by these type of entities that you sort of regulate the space you're in, you're being aligned specifically for that very experience. And those entities are, however they want to reveal themselves due to your perception. And so it can build to something really grand or something very minute, and it depends on where that person is at. And you and I understand how it is to be an observer, to truly get a greater real filtering and understanding of what's going on, and not just sort of a fragmented version of that, or potentially just something sort of more mild where the person is being disturbed at a very low level that would just be transmuted within their dreams or thoughts, and it doesn't have the density of presence that it's fundamentally rocking their world in all levels. So it kind of varies. Does that make sense?
Oh, totally, totally.
Yeah.
And as you're even mentioning that about the MySpace, like I said, I'm the first to admit that there's as much as I think I know. there's so much more that I know I don't know. But I remember one night my wife's working late, and I went around the corner. This is back in my drinking days, and I went around the corner to say goodbye to a good friend, two good friends of mine that were flying back to England the following morning. And so then it's time to say goodbye. I leave and I'm coming home. I pull into my driveway and something just doesn't seem right. And I go ahead and get out of my car and I take one step towards the house. And the next thing I know, I get all these flashlights in my face. You know, hands up, hit the floor. It's like a SWAT team out there hiding in my yard that bum rush me. And I don't know what's going on. So finally, after they realize this is just this guy doesn't got a gun on him, he's a normal dude, and he lives here because I showed him my ID and stuff. This is the guy that lives here. Well, and this is back in the day when people still had landlines. Somebody called 911 from this location, and we were waiting for animal control to show up to go in and do whatever they got to do to get your animals under control because we don't want to go in there and have to shoot them. And you could hear my mastiffs in the house going crazy. And I'm all, well, thank you for that, because don't go in there and shoot my dogs. They go, well, what we think happened is a burglar probably got in your house. I said, nobody's in there. As far as I know, my wife's working. I just got home from saying goodbye to some friends. Thank you, Jesus, I wasn't drunk. A couple of pints about an hour before I drove home. And I go, so there's nobody in there. Well, what we think happened was a burglar got in there and he's being, you know, attacked by your dogs and he got to a phone and called 911. So we got to go in and search. I'm all, okay. Well, what you got to please, you got to let me go in first because if you go in, you're going to have to shoot one of my dogs. And please don't do that. So I talked him into letting me go in the house. I said, what I'm going to do, you can see my master bedroom window. I'm going to open the door to the master bedroom. I'm going to turn the light on. I'm going to open the blinds so you guys can look into the room and see that I'm going to bring all three of my dogs in. Then I'm going to lock them in the room. Then I'll come back to the front door and let you guys in. And you can go anywhere you want to go. And that plan went off without a hitch. Got my dogs in there. That was the only room they couldn't go in and look, but they could see in the room through the window. And they turned my house upside down. Nobody had broken in. There wasn't, who knows if somebody tried, then saw the dogs and left. I don't know. But they turned my house upside down. There was, no signs of a crime or anything. They traced that call and they couldn't find anything wrong with the phone line. They contacted the phone company. There was no outages, no mixed communication or crossed wires with the neighbor or nothing. They traced it. It was coming from here. They don't know what happened, but somebody called 911 for my house. So I never said anything. But I'm thinking in the back of my mind, and my wife, we had Ghost-B-Gone at that time. We were doing investigations. I'm not going to tell the police officer it was a ghost. One of the ghosts here called you guys. I wasn't going to say that because then for sure, out come the cuffs and blood test and what's wrong with this guy? He's on something. So I don't say anything. But that's what I'm thinking in the back of my mind. And to this day, and I don't know if you're getting any messages right now, to this day, I'm wondering what happened there. We ended up, because of that situation, disconnecting our landline so it wouldn't happen again. And I'm thinking something must have happened in the home here, and one of the protective spirits thought to call 911 and get the police here. I don't know if maybe somebody was trying to break in and the spirit called for that reason, or if I don't know. Um, so those are just, the things that happen in life when you're in this biz, and you kind of just go, it is what it is.
Well, you referenced that at a certain point you gave up the hobby of a couple of pints here and there. Was that part of the catalyst?
So probably when my wife and I first met, we were set up on a blind date, but we didn't know it. If she sees this show, she's gonna go, "Oh," not my wife, but this girl who was I was at. Well, my wife knows this now, but I was dating this girl at the time. This is before my wife and I got married, and she didn't tell me that she was married and her husband was in England and he was about to come out here, and she wanted to end the relationship with me before her husband got here. I didn't know any of this. So she says, "Well, I'm going to introduce him to my good friend Sharon, who's single and on on the dating scene." So that's what she did. She invited us both at the same time to this concert, and we did hit it off. And the rest is, as they say, history. But when she met me, I remember we met up at Mount Charleston, and my parents were still alive at the time. May they both rest in peace. But I had borrowed my father's car to drive up there. I got so hammered that she had to drive me home in my father's car. And how I ended up with her phone number in my pocket after all of that, I don't know. So she must have really, I must have said and did something that she really said, "This is the guy for me. I'll work on his issue." But yeah, the first 10 years of our marriage, raging alcoholic and drug addict. And then finally, just one day, man, I just realized um, I'm probably going to die if I don't stop, or my marriage is going to end, or I can't help my clients. I can't show up. I mean, there were times where I would get calls, people needing help, and I wouldn't go and help them because I was sitting at the house high. Wasn't So I wasn't doing anybody any good, and then
Well, well,
I knew it.
well.
So I stopped. I asked God one day. I said, "Listen, you know that I know that you exist. You know that I know that you love me, and you know that I love you, and only you know if what I'm about to say to you I'm really being true." And really, I was at the bottom of the abyss. And so that's what I tell people: if you're not there, you're not going to get the help. But if you truly feel you're there at the bottom of the abyss, you've already let go and you've fallen into the abyss. God will know that you're ready. And if you truly are asking for his help, you'll help. And I remember having that conversation with him one night. And I woke up the next morning and I never did another line of Coke or smoked another joint or have had another drink since that day. And I've never had no urges. So do I tell people, no, don't stop going to AA if you need to go to AA, or don't reach out to the types of doctors you need to reach out to help you with this. If you need that, true, great. But really, if you're a spiritual person and you believe in a higher power or you believe in God, he's the only one. If your addiction is that bad, and it doesn't have to be, the addiction could be anything. It could be porno or fooling around with people behind your spouse's back, or whatever the addiction may be. You need God's help. If your addiction is that strong, you need God's help. And so I tell that story for anybody listening that believes in God that may have an addiction with something and need help for it. Um,
that
so
that was well, that was very clear. There were three entities that were bringing your attention to exactly how you could consider lucky or coincidence. That was the first knocking on your door to level up, to sober up. And so that was the first evidence-based example for you to recall. And they're being very clear. This was if you don't think you're having a close call, here's an example of this, and we'll continue presenting these sort of events throughout your life until you get a bigger message that this is not of any value. So it completely makes sense to me as they relate this story that they were just giving you another, like, I mean, quite frankly, having a few drinks with the SWAT team turning up and you're one breath away from being locked up for many other things. Holy moly. And this is actually a catalyst effect that has probably gone on. And they're saying they've done many attempts at reminding you of this, that you are so lucky that these events are always just short of something that would be catastrophic that never materializes, but you can talk about it. Does this make sense?
I can't believe that it's been all these years and I never looked at it that way.
Oh, they're just
And
telling me. Yeah.
I think you are spot on. And if I was there, I'd give you a big fat juicy kiss, um, and a big hug, because I think that's I'm getting this this like finally
Right.
you've been so laser focused on what you do now that little thing you didn't realize was one of many things that we did, and there were many others, but yeah, so many things happened. Even meeting my wife, I was 40 years old when I first got married to her, um, and I probably would still be single and probably be dead if I had not met her. So I think, from meeting her and having a person that didn't drink or didn't smoke and was the healthiest person I knew, who was going to be patient with me and wait for me to get my act together, to many other situations that I look back on and realize, and this goes even way back to even when I was, just out of the Navy, and living in Southern California. And I went to this, I drove about an hour to go to a party, to say goodbye to a coworker that was retiring. And I got so hammered at this party, they took my keys from me, and I ended up getting in a fight. I was quite the scrapper back in the day, like I was a bad drunk. So I got into, I mean, finally I found the guy that had the keys, and rather than taking any more punches, he gave me my keys. Everybody's like, if he crashes and dies, he crashes and dies. But we've we've done our best to keep the keys from him. He's going to go home. So I'm driving home in my truck, and I find out later that I'm weaving so bad, there was a highway patrolman just about to light me up. And I must have fallen asleep at the wheel, because in his report, I just all of a sudden sharp turn, veer right across all the lanes. And he said I was 100% sure the guy was going to drive off this cliff that was there. And I remember waking up right before I went over the cliff, because this girl sitting, who wasn't there, sitting in the passenger seat, yelled at me, "Wake up." And I'd seen that girl when I was much younger and drowning at a beach. And I was caught in a riptide, and I didn't know what to do. And I was about to go down for the third time, and she was bobbing in the water some feet away from me and said, "Swim this way." And when I swam that way, the waters got all calm, and I made my way into shore. But the lifeguard already came out and helped me get the rest of the way in. And he said, "I can't believe you made it in. I knew that you were struggling. I'm just about to come out there." I go, "Well, what happened to the girl?" And he goes, "What girl?" And I don't know how that conversation ended, but he didn't see any girl there. But many, many, many years later, this incident, I'm about to drive off this cliff, and that same girl is sitting in my truck seat, and she looks just like a very, very young Susan Sarandon, like the original Rocky Horror
Yeah,
Picture
yeah.
Susan Sarandon, or maybe even younger. And to this day, my wife always, if my wife sees, I can be anywhere in the house or in the yard, and if Susan Sarandon comes on TV for any reason, my wife will yell at me, "Hurry up, get in here! Your girlfriend's on the phone, on the TV." But she yells at me, "Wake up!" I see the cliff. The guy says I fishtailed back all the way across the other lanes. I don't really so much remember that, but I hit the center divider head on, flipped end over end onto the other side of the freeway. They had to cut me out with the jaws of life. I don't remember any of that. I remember going back later to see my truck, which was done at the engine's in the seat, and the roof is down on top of the engine. How I got out of there, I don't know. I ended up just having a broken wrist. And so I thought back to all of these things that have happened related to that, and how I shouldn't have made it through that. And you're right, you hit the nail on the head. These were all signs. to eventually get me to to where I'm at today. So yeah.
We're slow learners. What can we say?
Oh my gosh, I'm the slowest of the slow. Yeah, just so I try to tell people. I get a lot of people come to me with addictions, and they're all over the charts. Um, Anything that is destructive to you in your life that you can't stop is an addiction. So they're all over the board, the different addictions that these people present me with, and I tell them, just you just got to keep praying. There's power in prayer, but you got to believe in it, and you got to continue to ask for help. And it's only going to be when you're absolutely ready. Uh, you got to just you got to be ready, and you got to ask God for help because He's the only one that's going to be able to help you. So, and I don't even know why we got.
I love these. We can hang out all day and we will continue. Our friendship will continue to blossom. I mean, people love these sort of candid conversations, and especially with people like you and myself, where we're living this stuff and they want to hear about it. It's, we could literally, coffee with Father Shawn and San Qing. But no, this is awesome stuff. This is the type of stuff people need to hear more of because it evokes things inside people and they relate to it. And there's just so much power behind the experiences that we're having that, people want to hear more about it. So what we'll do is we're going to do a part 3 and we're going to go on adventures and get a whole
Yeah,
new
we got to go
series
on some
going.
adventures. We'll have to figure out what to wear. If I go out, I never go out in my Benedictine habit, which I'm
Yeah.
wearing today.
Yeah.
Because that just is, to go walk into a casino with your Benedictine habit on it would be a little bit interesting. And if I go out in a collar, then I end up having 20 people I don't know wanting to confess their sins to me, and receive communion right there. So that stops us from doing it. So I got to figure out how to dress. But if
Yeah.
we're going to go into a place where there's no crowd and we know that this place has all types of
Treasure
activity,
trove.
from your lowest vibrational to your Caspers floating around, and we're just kind of
Mm-hmm.
there to do a little house cleaning. I can wear either or.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you wear your beautiful
Yeah. I
Taoist
normally
robe when
I'll
you go
throw
out.
a jacket on, so I'll be sort of a little bit unassuming over the top, and it doesn't look as dramatic. But normally it's like, oh, it's a Harley jacket or something like that. Oh, okay, that's cool. You kind of blend a little bit, but yeah, I'm excited about this, brother. So I'm looking forward to that. But an amazing conversation with like-minded people today. This is really magical, and we can just do this reoccurring. I'm cool with this. People
Yeah,
love
and
it.
we'll do when we have to when we go out and do a little work together.
Yeah.
Definitely have to get that on film.
Yes.
That'll be something people will also enjoy to watch, and
Yeah.
who knows what that might lead to.
Yeah, no, I love it. So I want to thank Father Shawn for coming in here today and having an incredible conversation that just opens up a lot of different things for many people. Just the stories that we have when we've got decades of this stuff, we might as well share it with people because it evokes something within them, and they can relate to it in one way, shape, or form. That's the point of this podcast and the conversation is to raise someone's consciousness to something bigger than what they perceive as right in front of them. So, thank you, Father Shawn, for an incredible podcast and conversation. I want to thank the audience for sharing their time with us. I'm going to put all Father Shawn's social under here so people know where to find him. And they'll be like, oh my goodness, I've been looking. And here we have a solution. And that's exactly what Father Shawn does. So, and this is the perfect place to come and find that. And you, through your social, you do like, is it more Facebook or Instagram? Is it Facebook?
Where am I at? My wife got me. I think she got me well, definitely Facebook.
Yeah, yeah,
We
yeah,
her and I share one together. Sharon Whittington, I'm
yeah.
on there too, and then I'm on Facebook as Lawrence Morais, which
Okay.
is a stage name that I took to give honor to my mother and father. My father's first name was Lawrence, and my mother's maiden name was Maurice.
Oh, very
I
nice.
took that name. My name, Shawn Patrick Whittington, is right alongside Lawrence Maurice. But I
Perfect.
got the website Ghost-B-Gone, and I'm
Excellent.
easy to find. And I think my wife's also got me on Instagram and maybe Twitter. And what else has she got me on?
YouTube. YouTube.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're on an adventure, ladies and gentlemen. You're going to see a lot more of the Father Shawn and San Qing show here because this is it's
And you'll
great.
be coming on my show soon. I
Yeah,
have it written
look
down
forward
somewhere.
to
I
it.
was booked out about 3
Looking
months in
forward
advance,
to it.
but you already we got you down in the calendar.
Beautiful, brother. All right. Well, thank you again for sharing your time with us today. Thank the audience. And I am your humble servant and seafood, Taoist Master San Qing. And I'll see you in the next one, guys.